Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jeffrey Epstein Show. I'm your host, Bobbycapucci, and this is Daily Drop number 140. We're going to jump down to the Virgin Islands, and we're going to talk about the shit show that is Jeffrey Epstein's estate. And what's going on down there is an absolute travesty. With Denise George, the estate itself, and the survivors being left to hold the bag and look around and say, what in the hell is going on here? Because guess what? Why do these estates still have workmen at these estates? Why are there people there maintaining the gardens? Why are they getting cable bills still? Why are they getting any sort of bill? All of these places need to be boarded up, taped over. That's it. They've been seized. And then when the case goes forward and it's time for them to be liquidated, that money gets moved into a trust that can't be touched by Denise George. It can't be touched by Indyke or Kahn. And it gets distributed to the survivors by whatever the court says, whatever the amount is that they get. And that'll be a fight for another time, obviously. But the first step is to make sure that this whole entire estate, everything is locked shut right now. There doesn't need to be people at Zorro Ranch. There doesn't need to be people in the Virgin Islands, in the townhouse, in Palm Beach. That's it. The party's over. All right? The golden calf is gone. Jeffrey Epstein is gone. So I don't understand why they're even getting bills to these properties. Why do they still have the cable on? Why do they still have the electricity on? I don't get it. So basically, the survivors who are entitled to this money from their abuser are paying for the lawn to be maintained and for, whatever workers are still there getting, paid off of this estate and off of Jeffrey Epstein's left fortune. These people are, they're living the life while they're at work. Give me a break. No, that's it. This gets shut down. All property seized, liquidated into a trust, and then dispersed to the survivors of Jeffrey Epstein's reign of terror. Pretty simple and straightforward, if you ask me. So why is there all sorts of shenanigans going on? Why is there all sorts of BS surrounding the estate, especially in the Virgin Islands? I'll tell you why, folks. Pretty simple. Greed. There is so much greed going on, not only by Jeffrey Epstein's executors. No, they're greedy. There's no doubt, and they're definitely in the category of scum, in my opinion. But Denise George is greedy as well. She wants these islands. She wants to get as much loot as she possibly can for the Virgin Islands, and I'm convinced of that. Nothing she has said has convinced me otherwise. She is not the kind of person where I don't have faith in her. I don't have faith in her to go after Epstein's estate and make sure the survivors get this money. If that was the case, then she would never even have brought up how the Virgin Islands are like a victim in the case, et cetera, et cetera. So, in my opinion, it does not, the evidence that she's providing, the case that she's bringing forward, saying that the Virgin Islands deserves to be broke off a piece of change here is just, it's obscene to me. It's really obscene to me. So, we have a new article out, literally hot off the press, from the Miami Herald, and the headline is, Jeffrey Epstein's estate says its checks are bouncing, asks for court relief. Again, there should be no checks going out. You wouldn't have to worry about the checks bouncing if you weren't sending them out, if you didn't have people there working, if you weren't siphoning off the fortune, because that's what's going on now. All of these contractors, everybody has their hand out, has their hand in the till, pulling out a couple of bucks. Meanwhile, the survivors once again are left to fight tooth and nail for what they deserve. This article was written by Kevin G. Hall, and here we go. The late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, pedophile, was a man who, without blinking an eye, could cut a check to buy an island in the Caribbean, or a private jet, or a sprawling ranch. Those left to clean up his affairs now claim they can't pay the bills to keep the lights on. Well, that's a good thing. Turn the lights off. They don't need to be on. All of you parasites that were leeching off of this fortune that's sitting there, nobody even knows how much is in it or where it is or anything like that. All of you leeches, you're all done. The party's over for you. Go get real jobs, because what you're doing is you're taking the money away from the people who truly deserve it. Lawyers for Epstein's $600 million estate told a U.S. Virgin Islands court this week that liens imposed by the local attorney general leave them unable to compensate workers spread across the disgraced financiers, pedophiles, U.S. properties, a situation they say is hobbling efforts to sell off assets. Oh, give me a break. Give me a break. Nobody cares if the garden's a little overgrown. Nobody cares if there's workers inside polishing, the ebony throne or whatever the hell this idiot has at his old residences. Nobody cares about any of that. People are going to buy these places because they have a lot of value, okay? So don't tell me that you need the gardener there. Don't tell me you need the cable on. Don't tell me you still need a cook, because I'm not buying any of that jazz. Shut it all down. The Thursday filing to the Superior Court of the Virgin Islands, where probate matters are being settled, became public on Friday. The lawyers asked the court to strike down liens or at a minimum allow expenses of estate administration to take priority. Look, I'm not a big fan of Denise George, but if she was dropping these liens on them to make them stop spending money because it was about the survivors, then I'd be applauding her activity. And don't get me wrong, I'm happy that with the liens that they can't dole out any more of this money. But I just don't believe her motivations are as pure as she's trying to make them out here. And I think that story will be told when all is said and done and we see the big fat chunk of change that the Virgin Islands gets their grubby hands all over. As a result of the criminal activity liens, wrote lawyers on behalf of estate co-executors Darren K. Indyke and Richard D. Kahn, they have had returns for insufficient funds, multiple payments for upkeep of the estate's properties, including electric bills and pest control services. I mean, really? Why are they still paying for this anyway? Get rid of that stuff. None of those services are needed at this time. Nobody lives at that estate. The title holder does not live at that estate. So why are they being upkept? Basically with the survivors' money. Why don't you ask the survivors if they want the upkeep done at those houses of horror? All right? Why don't you ask them? Been unable to pay the salaries of caretakers for the estate's residences in Florida, New Mexico, and New York, or provide maintenance aircraft and vehicles. Well, provide maintenance to aircrafts and vehicles. Well, considering they're not getting paid in New Mexico, I wonder if I, show up with a $20 bill and ask for a tour if I'll get one. Guess we'll see. The harm caused by the government's lien-imposed freeze on the estate's account at First Bank is no longer theoretical. It is now immediate and real, the lawyers wrote, noting that checks to pay employees' health insurance coverage have bounced and that power may soon be turned off at properties. Unfortunately for the employees, they have to find another job. Jeffrey Epstein's gone. Their employer is no longer in the realm of the living, so they need to find other jobs. As unfortunate as it is that they're going to lose their health insurance and the place is going to lose its power, that's really none of our concern, right? None of these workers who were there came forward, right? They all signed their NDAs. They all went about their business and turned a blind eye because they were getting taken care of financially. Well, I hope they squirreled some of that away. If not, we have a booming economy. They can go out and find another job. I would suggest they don't use Jeffrey Epstein as a resume marker, and I would suggest that they don't use, that period of time on their resume, but I guess that's up to them. In the filing, lawyers for Indyke and Kahn allege that because of the liens imposed by Attorney General Denise George on January 31st, they can no longer pay for the defense of the 22 lawsuits pending against the estate arising from claims of sexual abuse by Mr. Epstein, including the forfeiture action asserted by the government as the basis for the imposition of liens. George placed liens on the estate as part of a civil enforcement action she brought in January, which she expanded this month to name Indyke and Kahn as co-conspirators. She alleges they all together engaged in a criminal conspiracy to facilitate Epstein's exploitation of minors, and she wants them to be barred from involvement in a proposed victims' compensation fund. I can't disagree with that. That's totally fine with me. And I'm with her all the way up to this point. Totally with her up to this point. If this was all she wanted to do is make sure that these clowns weren't involved, that the survivors were going to get a fair shake, then I'd totally be down with what she was up to here. But I believe she has other motivations. The Epstein estate proposed the fund late last year as a way to quickly provide funds for those who have accused Epstein of sexual abuse. But George fears that the estate's lawyers will try to drain it before making restitution in the Virgin Islands, where she says some victims as young as 12 were harmed. The Attorney General hopes to claw back 2 local islands owned by Epstein through shell companies. There you go, folks. Right there in the article, huh? Lawyers will try to drain it before making restitution in the Virgin Islands. Key. Listen to what they're saying here. Restitution in the Virgin Islands. Not restitution to the survivors. Not restitution to the ladies who brought the lawsuits. Restitution in the Virgin Islands, where some victims, as young as 12, were harmed. And then in the next sentence, the Attorney General hopes to claw back 2 local islands owned by Epstein through shell companies. Claw back? What does that mean? I'll tell you what it sounds like to me. It sounds like clawback means to the Virgin Islands so that they can get the loot for them. The amended enforcement action by George also alleges that Epstein's lawyers were involved in fraudulent misrepresentation to win tax breaks after Epstein began living there, most of the time following his release from a Florida jail in 2009 after serving a short stint for prostitution charges. Prostitution charges. Imagine the travesty. What an embarrassment the Justice Department is. What an embarrassment our whole entire justice system is at this point in the United States. It's a straight up embarrassment. And the fact that more people aren't screaming about it from mountaintops really disturbs me. I guess it's no big deal, right? I guess it's no big deal until the Justice Department just looks the other way on cases like this, or until they come and kick in your door and drag you out of your house. Then what? He pleaded guilty to state charges after the financier, pedophile, was given federal immunity from sex trafficking charges despite accusations from nearly 3 dozen underage girls. 3 dozen, folks, okay? 12, 24, 36. Absolutely disgusting. Negligent on the part of prosecutors, negligent on the part of his defense team even, negligent on everybody involved except for the local police department in Palm Beach, who really, really tried to push the ball here, who really tried to make things happen. But they were stopped at every turn by Acosta's team, Villafana's team, etc., etc. And these people are running around winning awards as like they're some sort of advocate of people who have been abused, and they're still keeping their jobs and, the whole nine, right? And then you go back to what we were talking about just right here in this article, and she's going after him for his tax breaks. Well, who were the people that signed off on those tax breaks? Jeffrey Epstein didn't just show up and say, all right, I'm getting tax breaks. That's it. I'm signing it up. No. He was assisted by people in your government, Ms. George, your government, who led him through your system to make sure that he got this tax break, to make sure he was able to open this bank, etc., etc. So please don't come forward now and act like for this whole entire time the Virgin Islands had no idea what was going on. It is offensive. The tax breaks went to Southern Trust, Epstein's purported data mining company, where one of the managers was Cecile de Jong, the politically connected wife of the 2-term former governor, John de Jong. I'm sure that had nothing to do with Jeffrey Epstein getting the bank. I'm sure that had nothing to do with Jeffrey Epstein exploiting the Virgin Islands as a safe harbor for taxes. I'm sure that had nothing to do with people looking the other way as Jeffrey Epstein engaged in a reign of terror. Sure, had nothing to do with it. Nothing to see here, folks. Keep it moving. In a recent interview with the Herald, George defended the freeze imposed on the estate by the liens, saying it was also necessary in part to get a complete inventory of the state's assets and expenses. Of course she's going to say that. She wants to, until the very end, when it doesn't matter, when she knows she has her fangs into a piece of this fortune, then it won't matter what it looks like, what the perception is publicly. But we all understand what's going on here. It's a battle royale over this money, and it shouldn't even be that way. It should not even be that way. These survivors should get this money. The end. I'm glad that the liens have been slapped on the estate. I'm glad that nobody's getting paid anymore at these estates. They're done. That's done. That part of their lives is over. They need to move on, get new jobs, whatever it is they're going to do, because the money from that faucet is no longer spilling out. It's done. And to the Virgin Islands, their part in this, well, of course, they act like they had no idea, right? Of course they're going to say that. And like Denise George herself said, no, we're not going to go after anybody from the previous governments of the Virgin Islands who were involved with Jeffrey Epstein. We're going after the estate. Meanwhile, Who helped facilitate all of the moves the estate was making? Who helped facilitate all of this bank and all of these obvious money crimes? These are all financial crimes, folks. There's money laundering going on here. We have bribes. We have political bribery. We have, you name it. You name it. This is the biggest, fattest RICO case in the history of the world. And if Denise George was serious, that's what she would slap these people with. But she's not serious, in my opinion, obviously. Obviously, this is my opinion, and I hope she proves me wrong. This is in one instance where I really hope that I'm wrong. I hope that when all is said and done, all she wanted to do was make sure this property was seized so that the survivors can get the money that they deserve, the reparations that they deserve for the trauma that they went through at the hands of this maniac. I hope that that's what happens. But unfortunately, we have to remember who we're dealing with here, folks. We're dealing with another member of the Justice Department, another member of a group who wants to protect their friends, obviously, and another person who truly does not care about these survivors. If she did, then it would never even be a question if the Virgin Islands was going to benefit financially from this. But here we are, still talking about it, still wondering what Denise George's motivations truly are. But the one thing that I will say about this whole entire thing, that the one good thing I'm taking away from this, is that with the liens, no more money is being siphoned out. No more money is being paid out for ludicrous things like light bills. No more money is getting paid out for the gardener. And in the end, all of those dollars add up, folks. All of that adds up. It's big money, and that money needs to be put into a trust, frozen, and then dispersed to those who are who have it coming to them, the ones who have suffered the trauma and the ones who get the settlements in their favor. That's where the money needs to go. And I don't want to hear about another dollar of it moving anywhere else. And I don't want to hear about the Virgin Islands clawing back islands, okay? I don't want to hear about them talking about them being victims. There's no room for any of that right now in this conversation. This conversation should be about two things and two things only: reparations for the survivors and justice for the survivors and for the rest of the country. Because let me tell you what, this is a major breach in trust by the Justice Department and the establishment as a whole. And it is up to them to fix it, because going forward, especially since I've been invested in this case, I don't believe anything they say. I have to vet every single thing I hear from the Justice Department and from the establishment at this point, because all they do is lie, and all they do is obfuscate, and all they do is tell half-truths. So I don't believe anything they say anymore, and I certainly don't believe their henchmen in the media, the executives that run these media stations, because we all know that they're all in bed together. They have this symbiotic relationship, and they're parasites. They live and breed and eat off of one another, and it's completely gross to watch. And I'm appalled by the whole entire thing, and I'm just really, really, really happy that people are finally starting to take a look around and say to themselves, what the hell is going on? Who are these people that think they rule over us with complete impunity, enough so that they can be engaged in a trafficking ring as brazen as this one is, as upfront and in our face and as obscene as this one is and was, without worry of anything happening to them? Well, that's over. The American people and the world are now paying attention, and the time is coming for all of these disgusting people. The time is coming for all of these people who are involved in Jeffrey Epstein's ongoing criminal conspiracy to face their day in court, to face justice. And that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to keep pushing for that. We're going to keep the heat on and the full court press on to make sure that the authorities do not sweep this under the table. Not this time, not again. All right, everybody, I'll be back tomorrow morning with the usual morning update and our daily drop. And if you'd like to get in contact with me, you can do that at Bobbycapucci at protonmail.com. That's BOBBYCAPUCCI at protonmail.com. Also, if you would like to help support the podcast, you can click on the GoFundMe link inside of the description box. All right, everybody, enjoy your Friday night. And if you're going out, partying, drinking, whatever it may be, please be safe. No drinking and driving. All right, everybody, talk to you in the morning.